At the beginning of the film, we're introduced to Samuel, a talented photographer with a thirst for adventure. This island is quarantined, but Samuel manages to reach there without being detected by the local authorities. Currently, a strange sleep phenomenon has enveloped the entire island, causing all its inhabitants to fall into a sound sleep. As a result, the island is completely isolated from the mainland. In addition to the already strange circumstances, these individuals possess a heartbeat, body temperature, and even identification tags attached to them. Yet they remain unable to be roused from their comatose state. Upon his arrival, Samuel strolls along the deserted and dimly lit streets completely by himself. Then a cautionary broadcast is heard, advising the remaining island inhabitants to immediately contact the authorities if they experience any strange physical symptoms. Later on, Samuel encounters a motionless bus filled with people who have drifted off to sleep during their activities. Intrigued by this, he enters the bus and captures photographs of these individuals, documenting the phenomenon with a sense of wonder. While doing so, Samuel discovers a girl with a pet goldfish next to her, and out of compassion, he takes the fish along with him. Samuel then meanders through the serene neighborhood without any particular destination. Realizing that everyone is deeply captured in an unshakable sleep, Samuel assumes that he can spend the night in any of the houses. Eventually, he stumbles onto the residence of an attractive woman who, like the rest, seems asleep. Cautiously, he approaches the woman and examines her identification tag, which reveals her name as Stella. And just as Samuel gazes at her, a couple of individuals dressed in hazmat suits arrive at the house. However, they simply observe the absence of activity from the outside and leave. The following morning, Samuel goes to the grocery store and approaches Stella, attempting to initiate a friendship. However, she responds rudely and leaves, causing Samuel to wake up from what turns out to be a dream. Later on in the day, he explores the desolate town on the island, where the only sign of activity are his new pet goldfish, continuous warning messages from the authorities, and people in hazmat suits monitoring the residents. Seeking solace, Samuel enters a church where he finds a group of people who have fallen asleep during their prayers. He seizes the opportunity to capture photographs of these people frozen in their last moment of consciousness. Upon returning home, exhausted from his day's adventures, Samuel quietly enters the room to find Stella sleeping peacefully. A sudden glimmer catches his eye, a diary lying next to her. Curiosity gets the better of him, and he hesitantly flips through the pages, with each entry revealing a fragment of Stella's dreams, fears, and desires. And the more he reads, the more his fascination grows, a magnetic pull towards understanding her deeper. Simultaneously, we witness the merging boundaries among dreams, hallucinations, and reality as Samuel engages in conversation with an imaginary manifestation of Stella. During their interaction, Stella provides insight into the origins of these events, explaining that a local piano teacher was the first individual to be affected by this strange occurrence. It becomes apparent that if someone in this dreamlike state is physically disturbed, their heart rate intensifies to such an extent that it could potentially lead to their heart rupture. Additionally, Stella reveals that apart from experiencing intense thirst and a sensation of dizziness and hallucinations, there aren't many other symptoms associated with this unusual phenomenon. The next day, the same warning is broadcasted once again, warning the remaining public about the ongoing danger. Moreover, authorities are seen actively patrolling the area, both on the ground and in the air. Nevertheless, Samuel manages to venture through the town once more, capturing the unawareness of its sleeping residents. Later, when he returns home, he suddenly decides to abandon the island and leave Stella behind, out of fear for contracting the illness himself. Unfortunately, as Samuel reaches the shoreline, he notices that the water has completely evaporated, compelling him to stay back on the island. Eventually, Samuel goes back to Stella and shares a revelation, either in a figment of his imagination or a hallucination. He bravely confesses that his presence on this island goes beyond mere documentation of this weird phenomenon. It's also fueled by his attraction towards her. Furthermore, Samuel reveals that during a previous visit to the island, he claims to have seen Stella at the grocery store, a sighting that instantly raised his attraction towards her. However, it is uncertain if this encounter occurred in reality or if it exists solely within the realm of his imaginary conversations. It is possible that although Samuel initially came to photograph the event, he discovered something more meaningful than just a story to capture on camera, a reason to remain on the island despite the inherent danger involved. In the midst of the unfolding events, Samuel re-enters reality and finds himself in an empty supermarket. However, out of nowhere, a couple of individuals dressed in hazmat suits also show up, causing him to panic about being potentially detected. Acting quickly, Samuel swiftly manages to steal someone else's identification tags and pretends to be asleep. Fortunately, the hazmat-suited individuals only briefly inspect his name tag before focusing on their shopping. Relieved by this, Samuel cautiously watches as the men casually collect a few items from the store and leave. Later on, within another fragment of his imagination, Samuel and Stella make plans to explore the city, and she proposes the idea of taking someone else's car. Samuel, however, strongly opposes this idea, but suddenly, Stella discovers an unoccupied car parked outside of a house. She goes inside the house to find the owner asleep, seizing the opportunity to retrieve his keys. While initially hesitant, Samuel eventually agrees to go through with their plan. Afterwards, they drive around the town together, snapping pictures and simply relishing the moment, while Samuel feels an increasing attraction towards Stella. Back home, Samuel is roused from sleep by the sound of people wearing hazmat suits. He hastily gathers his things and hides inside of a closet, while the visitors examine a sleeping Stella, monitoring her vital signs and briefly surveying the house before departing. Afterwards, he enters a restaurant and sits alone at a table, placing Stella's cardigan on a chair across from him. Overwhelmed with emotions, he begins to weep, realizing that his life has been reduced to a mere existence revolving around imagined dialogues with her. Yet even in his fabricated conversations, her persona serves as a constant reminder that he lacks the knowledge about the true nature of a fully aware Stella. Samuel persistently interrogates her with questions, even creating an imaginary scenario of their first encounter. But throughout it all, the fictional version of Stella responds with a mixture of annoyance and disappointment due to his inability to comprehend what is truly happening. The following day, Samuel decides to depart from the island and sets off on foot. Meanwhile, the mysterious individuals dressed in hazmat suits arrive at Stella's house for an inspection once again. As Samuel wanders through the town, he experiences an intense thirst, but he notices a lack of water in any of the homes. Eventually, he enters one of the houses and becomes extremely fatigued, thirsty, and too lightheaded to continue. Faced with no alternative water source in sight, he extracts a plant from its container and consumes its water saturated with soil. Eventually, Samuel undergoes a change of heart and returns home to Stella once again. Despite the uncertainty surrounding Stella's awakening, Samuel persists in his efforts to surprise and delight her with their home. He carefully plans these surprises by selecting objects that he knows will bring joy to Stella. So, drawing inspiration from her personal journals and recordings, Samuel attentively learns her thoughts and preferences. This leads to him gathering a variety of gifts, such as Stella's favorite lasagna, whimsical googly eyes, and even a headless Barbie doll, an odd yet cherished token he discovered. These small acts of love and the attention to detail behind them reveal Samuel's deep longing to connect with Stella, who's yet to awaken. Meanwhile, throughout Samuel's stay, we witness his constant pursuit of connection and understanding with Stella as he delves into her diary and recordings. Each new discovery about Stella captivates him, evoking a fascination with her unique personality. Gradually, Samuel finds himself falling in love with her, uncertain if she will ever wake up to reciprocate his complicated feelings. While it could be dismissed as merely an infatuation, his willingness to exist beyond the fear of losing awareness, simply to experience a fleeting moment in her presence, clearly reveals the profound depth of his love and admiration for Stella, even amongst this mysterious sickness. And despite the significant risk of falling under the sleeping spell, Samuel makes several attempts to leave the island, yet each time he has a change of heart, and he ends up returning to Stella's presence. One day, Stella suddenly wakes from her slumber, her mind foggy and her eyes blinking in confusion. As her senses gradually sharpen, she discovers Samuel sound asleep in her house. This unexpected sight leaves her perplexed, wondering how the man found his way into her home without her knowledge. Concerned and slightly agitated, Stella attempts to rouse him from his deep sleep. However, it becomes evident that Samuel has succumbed to the same mysterious sleeping spell, caught in a state of unconsciousness while still trying to connect to Stella. Meanwhile, as Stella spends more time with Samuel, she gradually becomes aware of the different approaches he uses to uplift her spirits. She finds heartfelt letters in various places around her home, expressing his emotions and admiration for her. Alongside these letters, Samuel organizes delightful surprises and small acts of kindness, aiming to bring a smile to Stella's face if she ever wakes up. Over time, Stella's annoyance starts to fade away as she becomes more receptive to his gestures. Initially surprised by Samuel's work, Stella eventually starts sharing their desire for companionship and understanding. However, their bond is abruptly shattered when Stella learns that Samuel went to great lengths without her permission to uncover intimate details about her life. Moreover, she discovers that Samuel had gone a step further by delving into her personal audio recordings, intruding into the most intimate and vulnerable moments of her life. This revelation leaves Stella stunned and overwhelmed, but she merely sits by his side without a word. Later, continuing from the previous events, driven by her curiosity to uncover the nature of Samuel, Stella delves deeper into her imaginative world. Hence, with the imaginary Samuel, she explores his persona by prodding him with questions, seeking to uncover the depths of his thoughts and emotions and experiences. The following morning, Stella awakens to the realization that her fantasies are no longer confined to her own mind. To her surprise, she discovers Samuel standing in the kitchen before her. At this moment, Samuel and Stella finally have the opportunity to engage in an actual conversation. Yet even with this long-awaited encounter, uncertainty still lingers in the air. Unfortunately, even in the end, the boundaries between the figments of their imagination and the authenticity of their existence remain blurred. In the final scene, we're taken back to the initial setting of the bus, where the entire event unfolded. As the woman whose goldfish Samuel had taken awakens from her sleep, we witness that she now possesses two fishes as opposed to one.